Today I'm going to be making crusted eggplant meatballs over spaghetti. I'm going to be making it with some basil, some garlic, some sun-dried tomatoes. I've got 1 can of chickpeas. I've drained and rinsed those. I got my eggplant, of course, 28 ounces of marinara sauce, and 16 ounces of whole wheat pasta. The first thing I usually like to do is to get this water boiling so I can get started on my noodles. So as you can see, I like to cut the eggplant into 1/4-inch pieces. Okay, I've got a little bit of vegetable broth. I'll go ahead and put that in there. Start sauteing these up. Okay, I like to put a little bit of salt and pepper in there. Now let's check on this water. Okay, looks like it's boiling. I'll go ahead and put my noodles in. Also going to cut up my basil a little bit. I'm going to cut up my sun-dried tomatoes a little bit. Okay, we'll save these for a little bit later. All right, these are coming along real nice. So they're starting to dry up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit more of my vegetable broth in there. And just keep sauteing them. Okay, so my eggplant and garlic is sauteing up real nice. I'm going to go ahead and make my coating mix. I go with 1/4 cup of raw cashews, a 1/2 cup of panko breading, a 1/4 cup of rolled oats. I got a teaspoon of salt, and the salt is, again, always optional. 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast. I'm going to go ahead and use my food processor today, so let's go ahead and get this mixed up. My rolled oats, my panko, my raw cashews, and some salt. So that's my coating mix. Okay, so I just preheated my oven at 375. It's time to make the meatball mix. I've got my 1 can of drained and rinsed chickpeas. I've got my sun-dried tomatoes. These are not the ones that you get in the jar with the olive oil. These are in the package, the plastic package that you find in your produce department. So I've got some sun-dried tomatoes. I don't know, it's probably about 3 tablespoons. Then I've got my basil. We're gonna go ahead and pulse this up a bit. Go ahead and get it off the sides. And now I've got a 1/2 cup of vegetable broth. I'll go ahead and put that in there. Mix this up. All right, that's looking pretty good. So I've got a teaspoon of oregano. I'll put that in there. 1 teaspoon oregano. 1 teaspoon of parsley. Go ahead and mix this up. Let's get it off the sides. So as you can see, it's kind of a pasty mix. Don't want to get it too wet. And I'll put my nutritional yeast in there. You know, this is optional, but I like to put just a little bit of salt in there. A little bit of pepper. Just kind of mix this up a little bit. Now it's time to add the eggplant that's been sauteing with the garlic. All right, start mixing this all together. Now, as you can see, it's still kind of loose. See how it's just a little bit loose? It's not really ready to make a meatball. That's when I have on hand about a half a cup of Italian breadcrumbs, and I just kind of mix it in there a little bit, just to kind of get that right consistency so I can start rolling it up into a ball. I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of the breadcrumbs. So that right there is a half a cup of Italian breadcrumbs. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and make the meatballs. I've lined a cookie sheet with some parchment paper. I've got my coating mix all ready to go, so it's like an assembly line. Now here's the thing about meatballs. It all depends on your family, your personality, what size meatball. My family tends to like them a little bit smaller. It takes a little bit longer, but it is well worth it. So let's go ahead and start making some meatballs. So it's basically just like normal meatballs. Just go ahead and roll them in a ball. And then I just like to roll them in my coating mix.
Vegetable balls.
Just go ahead and start putting them on
Vegetable kofta, basically.
the cookie sheet.
It's eggplant.
Yeah.
But I think the mix is pretty good. The coating is good. Probably make it quite tasty.
Okay, so my meatballs are all done. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the oven at 375 for about 30 minutes. Okay, so my meatballs are in the oven. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start warming up my marinara sauce. Oh, these meatballs turned out fantastic. I just can't wait to taste them. So let's go ahead and get ourselves a little bit of pasta. Some sauce on there. Give me a couple meatballs. A little bit of sauce on top of the meatballs. Oh, this is going to be good, I can just tell. Let's go ahead and cut one. Oh, they look fantastic. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of the spaghetti in there. That is so good. Oh, fabulous meal. Today I'm going to be making an Asian-inspired dish. It's Mandarin orange cauliflower over a bed of rice. It's a little bit like sweet and sour chicken, except it's whole plant-based. I'll be using a head of cauliflower, an onion of course, some green onions, some garlic, 2 cups of tomato sauce, and a can of Mandarin oranges. I usually use the 11 ounce, which is the smaller can, not the real tall one. But before I begin, I usually get started on my rice because it always takes so much time to do. So today I'm going to be doing a long grain brown, 1 cup of rice to 2 cups of water. Go ahead and give this a little bit of a stir. And this usually takes about an hour, so I'll go ahead and get this started. Okay, so the rice is cooking. Now it's time to cut up the cauliflower into bite-sized pieces. I'm gonna go ahead and coat these with unsweetened almond milk and then coat them again in some breadcrumbs and some spices. And just go ahead and put the cauliflower in the bag. Okay, so I've got the cauliflower in the reclosable bag. I'm gonna go ahead and put some unsweetened almond milk in the bag. And all this is gonna do is just to coat all the cauliflower so it just has a little bit of moisture for the breadcrumbs to coat to. Just gotta make sure it's nice and closed. Just keep working in that unsweetened almond milk so the cauliflower is now coated. Okay, that's good and coated. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get my second reclosable bag and put my breadcrumbs in. But first, let's put a little bit of pepper and some salt. Again, that's optional. Give this a shake around. There we go. So now I got some spices in the breadcrumbs. Go ahead and put that into the closable bag. And then I'm going to take my cauliflower and start coating it And as you can see, there's really not much unsweetened almond milk left. I think I used maybe, I think these are a half a cup. So I'll just go ahead and transfer that in. Okay, get rid of that bag. And again, make sure it's closed, and then just begin coating all the cauliflower. And the breadcrumbs are going to go ahead and stick now to the unsweetened almond milk. So what I have here is a baking rack. It's similar to a cooling rack, you know, like for cookies, except this can go in the oven. The reason why I like this is because it has a little bit of like a dry fryer. The air can ventilate around the vegetable and make it crispy on all sides instead of just sitting them on a baking dish like this. So before I go ahead and start arranging them, I like to put a little bit of tin foil so I don't have to clean up all the mess. Okay. So now the air can circulate around all the vegetables. So now I'm just going to go ahead and arrange all the vegetables on this baking rack. So there you have it. Now I have my vegetables laid out on this baking rack, and you can see how the air will be able to ventilate around it, which will give it a crispier edge around the entire surface of the vegetable itself. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the oven at about 400 for about 20 minutes. Okay, so now it's time to make the sauce. So I'm gonna go ahead and start mincing up the garlic. We'll go ahead and put these in the pan. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of water to the garlic. Smelling really good already. You can always add a little bit more water. Okay, that's just starting to get a little bit translucent, so I'm going to go ahead and start cutting up my onion. Now I like to put just a little bit of pepper in there, and a little bit of salt, and that's optional. The garlic is just starting to caramelize a little bit. Don't forget, you can always add a little more water. Alright, so I got a little bit of water in there, you can see in the bottom, just so it doesn't burn things a little bit, but I've caramelized the onions, I've caramelized the garlic a little bit. Now it's time to go ahead and start cutting up the green onion. I usually break up the green onion into two parts. Half of it goes into the sauce, and the other half, the green part, actually goes as a garnish on top of the main dish. So let's go ahead and start cutting this up. There. I will save that for the garnish on top. Let's go ahead and check on the onions and make sure the water's not disappearing. And as you can see, it's just starting to disappear a little bit. So again, I just add a little bit more water as I go. And continue to stir them up. They're getting nice and yellow, so that means they're caramelizing up pretty good. So now it's time to go ahead and cut up the rest of the green onions. And we'll go ahead and put these into this mix right here. We'll go ahead and give this a stir in. So I keep checking the water to see if it's still there. It's got a little bit of moisture in there, so I'm good to go, but I can always add a little bit more as I go. There, that's looking really good. So now I go ahead and just start throwing in the rest of the stuff. I usually like to go with a couple tablespoons of brown sugar. Put a little bit more water in there. Then a quarter cup of white sugar. I got a tablespoon of tamari sauce. And a little bit of sriracha or sriracha. You know, like a tablespoon, maybe that's all up to you. Get this going. And then I go ahead and add my 2 cups of tomato sauce. And we'll let that start to stew up a bit. Okay, so I like to let this cook for about 10 or 15 minutes just to kind of get rid of some of the moisture in the sauce. And I'll go ahead and add the Mandarin oranges. Again, that's about 11 ounces, I think it was. And then go ahead and put in my green onions. You got a little bit of the Mandarin oranges with some of that garlic. It's gonna be really good. Now I'm gonna go grab the cauliflower that's been baking in the oven. Okay, so as you can see, it's kind of a little bit crunchy, you know, it's nice bite-sized pieces. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump this into the sauce. Now the thing is, you wanna do this just before you're about ready to serve it because it does keep some of the moisture. Let's get some rice. See what this is doing. Oh, this is looking good. We'll go ahead and fluff this up. It's a little hot. Put some rice on a plate. Put that out of the way. And we'll go ahead and get some of this. And there you go. It's like a sweet and sour chicken, but it is whole, plant-based. It is awesome, and I can't wait to taste this. Cauliflower's got a little bit of that breaded crunch. I love the garlic. You know, I just can't believe this is whole, plant-based. This is awesome. The family's gonna dig this one. How did we